everyone, welcome back. I'm Peter, botanical horticulturist here at Hortus Amsterdam, and in this episode we're going to look at propagating plants with two very common techniques, as stem propagating and leaf propagating. And why we would do this is to preserve special plants, to make more plants, to give away to other people, or if you're a home gardener, to overwinter something as a cutting inside your house. So here we have an example of the kind of plant we would make a cutting of. This is a Pelegonium, mostly known as a geranium, and this is something we would make a stem cutting of, but the plants we're going to use for that is in the glass house, so we can go over there and collect some good cuttings for that. So here we have a Pelargonium zonale that we're going to propagate. This is one of the parent species of many of the Pelargoniums you can buy in the shop, and so that's why we're going to propagate this one. I thought that would be interesting. When you propagate Pelargonium specifically, look for a cutting that is 3 to 5 centimeters long of semi-hard wood. That means that it's not soft like this and it doesn't bend too easily, because if as a cutting that would wilt too quickly. So what we look for is something like this over here. This piece also with short internodal space, because there's a node and there's a node, and plants generally root more easily the closer a cut when a cut is made to a node. So when you make the cutting, make it just under a node, more or less like that. Okay, so the next plant you're going to propagate is this Kalanchoe Bajarensa from Madagascar, and it's a very easy one to propagate because it's just by leaf cutting, and all you really need to do is just chop off a piece of leaf. It mustn't be a young leaf, it mustn't be the oldest leaf, but a mature, healthy leaf is the best. So like I said, it doesn't really matter where we make the cut, we just chop and that's it. So this is an example where you take an entire leaf for a cutting, but there are other plants which reproduce naturally by making their own leaf cuttings. You can now have a look over this way. So over here is a plant, it's also a Kalinkowi. It's called, one of its common names is Mother of Thousands. And all along the leaf edge it makes baby plantlets, and when these drop to the ground they can grow new plants. So here's another very familiar plant. This is an Echeveria, and it also reproduces with leaf cuttings, and this is how it would also naturally reproduce if the plant was damaged in nature. And it's really as simple as breaking off a leaf just like that, and it's just important to break the leaf off right close to the stem. Right, so let's go plant these up. So we can start off with planting the Echeveria leaves. These are extremely easy. There are a couple of different ways of doing it, but the easiest way is simply to just lay it on top of the soil. You could also bury the tip just deep enough to keep the leaf up straight, slightly sideways. Easy as that. Soil to propagate plants in is slightly different to normal potting soil. First of all, it doesn't have to have any extra nutrients in it, and it has to have a good balance between moisture and aeration. So the most basic recipe you can use is 50% potting soil and 50% perlite. These ratios change according to what you're propagating, and sometimes you don't even use something like potting soil, you'd have to use something like sand. It all depends on what plant you're trying to propagate. The next thing we can propagate is the Kalinkowi, and this is a very big leaf, so it's easiest to chop it up a little bit. The same that you would do for begonias, for example. It would, the leaf cuttings would usually root at the main leaf vein. And so again, what you do is just put it into the soil deep enough to keep it up straight, and no need to press it into the soil. Okay, so next we're going to propagate the Pelegonium cuttings. And as you can see, they've wilted quite a bit already. So with these sort of things, cut off all the excess leaves, because the moisture that's in this cutting now is all the moisture that the cutting has until it makes roots. So we cut off excess leaves to stop evaporation. So depending on what you propagate, sometimes you may have to use rooting hormones to help the process. Again, Pelargoniums are extremely easy, so all you really need to do is make a hole in the soil, and then, as I mentioned before, try to get 2 nodes in the soil, but 1 is also fine. just like that. And then again, just press it firmly enough to keep the cutting sturdy in the pot without compressing the soil. And then after that, you have to water the soil. Again, it doesn't have to be completely soggy because all we're trying to do is create an environment where the cutting will root. The next important bit is where to put your cuttings, and this must not be in the full sun where the plant was growing. It has to be in a much slightly cooler, stable environment. Again, so that the plants do not lose too much moisture before they've made roots. So one thing you can do with more sensitive plants, like you could do it with the geranium for example, is to put it in a Ziploc bag. Once your soil is at the right moisture level, you can put it in a Ziploc bag. This makes, for cuttings that work like this, makes it extremely easy because you just put it in the Ziploc bag and forget about it. And with the succulents on the other hand, you would not water them necessarily immediately. You have to kind of keep an eye on them and watch for something to happen. And you can slowly start watering them as they're developing. But for now, just leave them in a bright spot, not hot, and then just wait for them. Okay, so here was a quick overview of the easiest methods to propagate plants with stem cuttings and leaf cuttings, what we use at the Hortus, and also it's very easy to do at home. One thing to remember though is the cuttings don't always work, so don't count your chickens before they hatch. If these work, we will keep you updated on that. Thanks for watching. Bye.